Before I even begin to discuss this question, let me qualify or disqualify myself. I am very obviously not black. And I am not going to presume or pretend to know how you feel about Dr. King's speech as a black man or as a community or as a race. But I will tell you this, as a white man, as soon as I heard we were going to do this topic today, the first thought that flashed in my head is that just about 50 years after that speech, which still gives me goosebumps when I hear it, a white player who is still a starter for the Philadelphia Eagles used the N-word plural. He said, "I'll fight all you N's," and flat out got away with it. And he still starts for the Philadelphia Eagles. So you said, we've come a long ways, but we still have a long ways to go. I, for one, as a white man, remain ashamed that Riley Cooper went unpunished for uttering that word in this 2013 that we all live in right now. But I will do this, Stephen A. We're talking about some scope and some history, and I do go back even farther than you go back. And I will tell you this. What have I seen evolve in sports with a racial component? Number one, I have seen the evolution of the black quarterback. And I am proud that I was able to cover the early beginnings of the black quarterback. I was at the LA Times, I think it was 1976, and they sent me to spend an entire week with Doug Williams at Grambling University. And it was a privilege and an honor to get to know that young man. And after one practice I attended, obviously the only white guy there, the late, great Coach Robinson, Eddie Robinson, called me over to his team as it was gathered around him and said, "Mr. Bayless, I would like you to address my team and tell these young men what the real world is really about." And I thought to myself, I don't know if I know what real world they're about to enter. I only know my real world. But I did it as best I could at age 24. And I also got to know during that period the great Warren Moon. Covered some of his games up in Seattle at the University of Washington. And I was appalled that Warren Moon went undrafted and had to escape to Canada to prove to the NFL he could play in the NFL. And I was appalled leading up to that draft that year that I called some GMs, and one GM told me, very prominent GM, Doug Williams did not have the mental skill set to play quarterback in the National Football League. We've come a long way since then. Robert Griffin III and Colin Kaepernick, and we can go on and on. Russell Wilson, and I'm very happy with that. I'm proud to have watched that evolution. Go ahead.
Well, the thing that I think is important to remember is that, Skip, I appreciate everything that you're saying, and there's nothing remotely wrong about what you said. But I have an obligation to cover your back and all of our backs by saying what needs to be said that can't come from your mouth. The fact of the matter is this. Whether it's RG3, it's Donovan McNabb before him, it's Randall Cunningham before him, it's Warren Moon with the Houston Oilers, and then the Minnesota Vikings before him. There has been the augment of the black quarterback. There have been a lot of stereotypes, a lot of stigmas and things of that nature that have affected black folks. And even though it's still a battle, the fact of the matter is that white America has to be given some credit where it's due for its evolving, its evolution. You know, we sit here and we're quick to point out, and as a black person, I'm not going to hesitate to point out when I think something is wrong or it puts us in the role of a victim when I believe we as a people have been done wrong. But that's because I don't hesitate to give credit where credit is due when white folks have done something right. And the fact of the matter is white folks have evolved. We have come a long way. But as we look at ourselves as a people, as a nation of black people, and I love my people, we don't always do the right things. Because, again, when you talk about Dr. King's speech, part of his speech is that he dreamed of one day his 4 little children would sit there and be judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. And then you have people that are conducting themselves in a way, dare I say, of questionable character. And when that happens, you know, we can't lean on race then. We've got to look at ourselves internally. We've got to internalize. We've got to hold ourselves accountable. And one of the things that I tell people, and I beg the indulgence of all my white contemporaries in this business, understand, please, just because we're talking about race doesn't mean we're calling anybody racist or anything like that. But I'm going to share something with you, Skip, that I've told our bosses here at ESPN, that I've told my bosses at any job that I've ever had in all my years. White folks come to work every day with a job to do. Black folks come with a responsibility. When you come on this show, Skip, every day you come on this show, you do your job, you go home. Skip, when I come on this show, the expectation is emanating from all over the place in the black community. Don't let us down. Make sure you say this. Make sure you touch on that, et cetera, et cetera. Trayvon Martin's a perfect example because before the hoodie issue, Skip, he was simply a young black man, a young black boy at 17 years of age that was gunned down. The individual that gunned him down wasn't even white. He was Peruvian and Hispanic, okay? Yeah. But it didn't stop Twitter, it didn't stop Facebook, it didn't stop emailers, it didn't stop callers into radio shows from calling up and saying, Stephen A., you have to say something about this. Why, Skip? You know why? Because as a black man, there are very few of us who are deemed to have a voice in the community. So any of us who has a voice, our community is looking at us to say something. I don't know of any white individual amongst my contemporaries who have that responsibility. It's not white people's fault. It's a personal problem that we have going on within our community where black folks are looking at anybody black in a position with influence, whether it's the microphone, it's the camera, it's both, whatever the case may be. You're putting that onus on our shoulders. It is inescapable. It is not something that is talked about, but it is a very palpable expectation that comes with any of us. And because you have that placed on your shoulders, which is by and large the reason that we find ourselves touching on things, dare I say, that may be a bit controversial, that may be a bit, you know, whatever word they want to use to bring attention to it. That's how it goes. And so people need to understand, if we have that responsibility, it emanates from a Dr. King's I Have a Dream speech, because when he was talking about his dream and he was talking about one day the potential of it becoming a reality, he's speaking to these things, and he's speaking to us in a fashion that will facilitate and help us feel the need to make sure that our message reverberates in such a profound way that we make the kind of difference that he aspired for us to make. If you're not willing to accept that responsibility, it's going to be a problem, not for white America, but for us within our own community. It's just something that white America needs to understand.